Dynamic range is overrated. Yep, I said it and I meant it. And today I'm going to talk about what I mean by that, why I think that, and why I believe we need to have this conversation. This conversation has been long overdue. What's going on, everybody? My name is James Jackson. If you're new here, I do tips, tricks, and news and reviews in the film and video making industry. But more importantly, I'm just a guy who loves filmmaking, who loves cameras, and loves talking about them, and also wanting to put my knowledge and my skills out there to help other people build themselves up and level themselves up. And if that's something that you want to be a part of, I would definitely love to have you. Definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you can stay up to date on all the content going forth. So yeah, dynamic range is overrated. Yeah, that is a very, very hot take to make, especially in this day and age. But I'll be honest, I do believe it is very true. By the way, this isn't I'm not the first person that has said this. Joshua, most of you guys know him as Cine Daillies, has actually made this argument on his own channel. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link up there, as well as I'll put a link into it in the description so you can hear it for the word from the horse's mouth himself.
Dynamic range is at the top of my list. I think is the most overrated topic here on this platform on YouTube, I think, because there's so many different factors that dynamic range contributes to. And it's not always the whole story when creators talk about it, right? To go a little bit more deeper into that, the camera is going to get you 40% there, the image that you want, right? Because you have cameras that have 13 stops of dynamic range, 14 stops, 15, 16, so on and so forth. And that's great, that's fantastic, because, in the narrative context of things, narrative commercial, the camera isn't relied so much on the quality I can give. It is important, but the layering of light, the set production, how you decide what time of day to shoot for light, like all those things get you the rest of the way there to the image that you want to create.
I say all this, not the fact that dynamic range is unimportant. It absolutely is, but how we as YouTubers have been talking about, well, not just YouTube, but people online, the online conversation in the different forums and the different posts, that people are now like bashing cameras or saying cameras are unacceptable because they don't have a specific number of dynamic range. Recently, I watched a video where somebody was like, Blackmagic is only touting this camera have 13 stops of dynamic range. And it's, in this day and age in 2023, that's just unacceptable. And I think I want to, the whole point I'm bringing up this and I'm having this conversation, and this is a conversation. I don't want you guys just to listen to me. I want to actually have this interactive. So leave your comments down below and definitely give your thoughts. I want this conversation to continue because I think we need to actually have a serious thought. We're so focused on what a number that a company's given. We're not looking at the quality of the performance of the camera. No, so because we're focused on cameras that say they're 15. Like again, only having 13 stops of dynamic range is unacceptable. That part. It's only a certain amount of sensors of digital video cameras, digital cinema cameras that actually shoot 13 stops or more, and you can probably count them. Well, you used to count them on one hand, maybe like 2 years ago. Now we got to throw in the Alexa 35. You could probably count them. You still got fingers. Let's just say you still got fingers left of cameras that actually can shoot above 13 stops of dynamic range. I'm going to leave a link to an article by a person who is I'm gonna butcher the name, so I won't say it, but he runs the Confinity forum, and he makes, I think it's Gaffa Gear, Jerome. His name is Jerome, but the channel he runs is, I believe it's called Gaffa Gear. But he made an article on their website really going into the technical details of sensors and sensor capabilities. So I'm gonna leave a link to that article. Please go check it out and please read it for yourselves. At the worst, you learn something. So it's good to just read up on it and check it out. But the point he was making was that most sensors can only see up to 12, maybe a little bit above 12 stops of dynamic range. The I'm talking vast grand majority of cameras can only see 12 of the stops. It's just the limitations of what the sensor's capability is, as well as the limitations of the bit depth. Anything that is 12, typically that's 12 bit, can really only see 12 stops of dynamic range for the most part. I don't think a single red actually gives you 13 stops, or at the very least barely gets to 13 stops. None of them get to 14. None of the red cameras get to 14 stops of dynamic range. Just to be clear, even though they are 16-bit, none of them have super high, like the dynamic range that everybody expects, like 14, 15, 16, 17. None of the reds actually do that. They're really the only cameras that I am aware of that actually shoot 13 plus stops of true stops of dynamic range, 13 or more, is the original RELX sensor. So I put all the cameras, the 65, the Mini, the original RELX, the Amira, because they're all using the same sensor. That sensor, the sensor that's in the Alexa 35 now, which is now the new industry standard, benchmark, gold standard, the Panasonic VariCam, the Sony Venice, the Sony Venice 2, the Canon DGO sensor that's in the C70 and the C300 Mark III, and the Fujifilm X-H2S. That's it. These are the only cameras that I can think of that actually have 13 plus stops of dynamic range. Now, some people are going to say, no. Cine D and Gerald Undone, they stout that the Sony A7S has 13 stops of dynamic range. Yeah, because it also does a lot of noise reduction in the process. It's a good noise reduction process, don't get me wrong, but it uses a lot of noise reduction in order to get that 13 stop benchmark. And you can't turn it off. There's no way to turn it off. If I was to put a lot of these cameras that everybody touts, including the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K, and add a noise reduction, oh, you can get 13, 14 stops of dynamic range easily. But the whole point I'm trying to make is we're sitting here arguing about numbers. We're arguing about the numbers, and instead of the fact of how does a camera perform going into the highlights, how does it perform going into the shadows? And that's a very important thing. And what I really hoped that people saw with my dynamic range test of the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K versus the C70, if you haven't seen that video, by the way, go ahead, check it out. I'll leave a link up there, as well as leave a link in the description. But the point I wanted to throw it out is that if you notice, between the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K and then the C70 clearly has more dynamic range. It's clear. Like, I'll just say, like, if you haven't seen the video, again, check it out, but it clearly has more dynamic range than the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K. But that's that's only in C-Log 2, and the way C-Log 2 does it, the consequences of it doing and having that more dynamic range, it tends to make the shadow areas where a lot of people tend to play, where a lot of people like putting a lot of their skin tones is in that lower region, not the upper region. It looks flat. There's not as much. If you look at the Cinema Camera 6K and you look at the C70, there is more dimensions in the shadows. There's more dimension in the Cinema Camera 6K than there is the C70, even though the C70 can see more. So again, it's more about how does the camera perform versus the actual number. Because I guarantee you, and I'm putting this out right now, hopefully this will come out before the Cine D test. If it doesn't come out before the Cine D test, oh well. When I say dynamic range is overrated, I mean the obsession of the number that a camera's dynamic range is supposed to be. The quote unquote the obsession of the quote unquote true dynamic range. You know, everybody's waiting for the Cine D test, and not to knock Cine D and not to knock people like Gerald Undone. They provide amazing information. It's information that is well needed, but it doesn't, to me, none of these are knocks against a camera. The only thing is basically how does the camera work into your workflow? Because at the end of the day, like, we want 15, 16, 17 stops of dynamic range. We want it to be more film-like because that's the more cinematic. And that's not cinematic. It's just a tool. It's just a tool to help tell your story. Cinema or cinematic is the storytelling, is telling stories through visuals. It's basically using these forms, all these tools to tell the story we're trying to tell. That is cinematic, and I've done videos about this before. And I bring all this up because, look, once you start adding lights, like right now, I'm not just shooting I just turned the light on and hey, whatever. You know, this shot is set up. Like right now, my key is a giant 8x8 scrim and a bounce board. And I'm just using a Forza 150 to shoot to the bounce board and to get skids to give me really smooth roll off. I got a Forza 60C going down here to sort of give a little lift and sort of ideas to the back, to this right here, to this tree. And then I got my little right here to give me a little kicker. And then I got a light over here to give me feel. But all of this is just set up. I don't just go and nobody, like any true professional cinematographer is going to light. Anybody that actually calls themselves a cinematographer, anybody that actually has the respect to call themselves a director of photography, they're going to light. But the truth about dynamic range is most production companies may be exposed for 10 stops of light. Nobody really exposes for 15, 16 stops of dynamic range because one, in just shooting the scene, because number one, you're putting factors in things that may be potentially out of your control, like the sun. If you need a situation where you really need 16 stops of dynamic, typically that means you have the sun. But that means you're also putting in your work, the image of your project in the hands of the sun, something that you can't control. The sun is going to do what the sun is going to do. The earth is going to do what the earth is going to do. And while it is interesting to just go in, it's like, oh, no lights and go like, and in certain situations that may apply, but for a lot of situations, when you are telling stories, you're going to set everything up. Even in those situations, it is very planned, it's methodical, it's thought out. Like the one experience that most people probably bring out is The Revenant. But let's be clear, The Revenant was heavily planned. They didn't just go, let's just go shoot out in the day. Nobody does that. It's planned methodically. And if you actually watch the behind the scenes on how they did things, you know, you'll see that there's a lot more to it than just going out and just filming in natural light. Even HDR's displays, most of them typically only see 10 stops. So it just makes sense. It doesn't make sense to try to shoot something for like 15, 16, 20 stops when it's not needed, especially since there isn't a display that really takes advantage of it. And then you got to go in the post where you're taking all that. The whole point is to capture it so you can have all that information to play with. And then you're going to compress it all, especially if you're delivering to Rex 9. You're compressing it all down to about 6, 7 stops, maybe 8. Even when stuff goes out to YouTube and you look at stuff that go to YouTube, none of them really, you're not seeing 16 stops performance on your display because no affordable monitor or no affordable TV can display that. So I'm going on a rant, and I apologize, but I think we need to stop fixating on the freaking number of a camera's performance. And look at this. I say this not just because of the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K, which has a great dynamic range performance. I say this also for the G8-6 that got hounded. The G8-6 has a great dynamic range performance. There's so many cameras that have great dynamic range. The Kinfinity Mavic Edge 6K, which is far more expensive than all of these, but it got hammered by a lot of people that did these tests that said, oh, well, it doesn't have that much dynamic range, so it's not. It's like, see how it performs. There's a reason that it in terms of the Kinfinity camera, it gives you so much control over how you distribute that dynamic range, far more than any camera that's underneath that price point. We really need to stop fixating on what the numbers say, because, you know, again, there's a very, very select few that truly hit that, and most of them are like far out of the affordability range. Does that mean we need to not try to push things forward to have that? No, of course not. I don't believe that cameras should be dismissed because they only have 12 stops of dynamic range. 90% of all the cameras produced max out about 12 stops of dynamic. 90%. Even some of your favorite cameras, they max out at 12 stops of dynamic range, of true stops of dynamic range. Having said that, we got so much technology. We got lights that are affordable, more compact, travel friendly. We have lenses that can really sort of help out with that dynamic range. Some with a lot more characters, with smoother fall off. You can add filters to that. But more importantly, our NLEs, our post-production softwares are getting smarter, and they're able to really pull out that information and really take advantage even of that 12 stops. It's just a matter of just you understanding your own tool, which if you're going to be a professional in this business, you should really understand the tool. Anyways, I just wanted to just go on that. I know this is a bit of a rant, but I wanted to just get this out there, and I wanted to start this conversation. Which why I'll say right now, I would love to hear from what you guys have to say. Again, leave your comments down below. Am I crazy for saying dynamic range is overrated and we need to really reevaluate how we view this? Let me know what you guys think. Leave your comments below. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, take care, everyone.